Hello there. I'm trying to spread some positive vibes and create additional media for those who love RWBY as I do. We can still enjoy what came before regardless of what is going on with it now. I hope that Mr. Cinema Wins doesn't mind me aping his format.
Legends. Stories scattered through time.
Yes, it's a bit of an exposition dump giving us a brief history of Remnant, but it leaves room for the story to immediately start taking place.
But perhaps victory is in the simpler things that you've long forgotten.
I'll be honest in not realizing until very recently that this final piece of narration is Ozpin. I'd watched RWBY at least a half dozen times through before realizing. And it plays in later seasons when we find out that Salem and Oz had a relationship. It's as though the entire series had been drafted from the start.
Are you robbing me?
Yes!
Oh.
That little...
Oh.
When she realizes she's being robbed.
Hey!
And Torchwick completely unfazed. And I love the semi-diegetic music putting us right into RWBY's shoes. First look at weapons in this universe is a win. You can hear the glass plinking in the ship. I wonder who this character is derived from.
You're a huntress. Can I have your autograph?
And then we're shown the RWBY who is in fact just a child and a fangirl moment after all the badassery we just witnessed. Speaking of which, badass good girl. And a badass bad girl for Cinder.
You have silver eyes.
I've forgotten about this myself by the time Chekhov's Ex Machina is fired, but it does serve to indicate that RWBY is special and or
They
unique.
taught you to use one of the most dangerous weapons ever designed?
A gardening tool? Well, when it's the weapon of choice for Death himself, yeah, I'll go for that.
I was complete garbage before he took me under his wing.
Under his wing.
That's my Uncle Crow. He's a teacher at Signal.
I don't think that this is a retrospective continuity mistake. I'd say that Crow became a teacher to stay close to RWBY and train her beyond anyone else her age, and then immediately left when Oz gave RWBY a place at Beacon.
But husband and huntresses are just so much more romantic and exciting and cool, you know?
Yeah, some more exposition from RWBY giving us an insight to her motivation, but delivered with such giggly joy it's believable dialogue and we establish her outlook and why she wants to be a huntress.
Who's that?
My name is Glinda Goodwitch.
Oh.
I get the impression that this was meant as a joke rather than to lampshade the name's position, but it accomplished both.
It's like meeting new people, but better.
Showing us a deeper view of who RWBY is inside. And I can relate to this character. There are myriad things better than meeting other people.
Of course I'm happy with Crescent Rose. Oh wait! Are we supposed to go to our dorms? Where are our dorms? Do we have dorms? I don't know what I'm doing.
I don't like how much I can relate to this at the time of writing.
Dust, fire, water, lightning, energy.
Well, a bit of show and tell regarding dust, showing us that dust can be volatile and when activated it takes the form of the energy it contains. And meeting the rest of the RWBY. The RWBY? RWBY. Meeting the rest of Team RWBY is what I'm saying.
Same company, infamous for its controversial labor forces and questionable business partners.
Okay, yes, more exposition, but it does work from a character point of view. It shows us who Blake is, creates character motivation and conflict between the two, begins to sow the seeds of the Blake Faunus twist, and teaches us more about the world we're in one fell swoop. I'll talk more about this differing in perspective in the conclusion.
Well, I like it. Not many people have an appreciation for the classics these days.
Yeah, the classics.
RWBY may not be a people person, but she's able to help out the people around her.
What's this?
Dust for Dummies. Sure, it's most likely for the gag, but it further indicates that the SDC doesn't care for people, shown visually this time.
You just made one friend and one enemy.
Well, it's about a man with two souls.
If I pointed out every instance of foreshadowing, I think we'd be here a while.
Guys, she's right. People are trying to sleep.
RWBY taking the side of right, rather than simply siding with her sister. RWBY is a hero.
Wake up, lazy bud!
Having set up all of Team RWBY, we're given a lightning introduction to Flower Power. And Nora, you are a treasure. And Ren is my most relatable character, I am unashamed to say. And it is so funny keeping Ren center frame and match cutting through the morning with Nora zipping around him. And I just noticed that Nora is introduced with a drum roll.
I don't need people to help me grow up. I drink milk.
The shorter of the Elrics begs to differ. Milk doesn't equal growth.
The smartest girl in class combined with the strongest girl in class. Together we will be unstoppable.
This sets up Weiss's arc for later, showing her scheming just to use Pyrrha for her strength.
All first-year students report to Beacon Cliff immediately.
It was nice meeting you.
Likewise.
Subtle, but setting up Pyrrha's magneto powers from the off. We know that there are both blackbirds and small nevermores, and I can't tell which that is, but wouldn't it be funny if it turned out that that was Crow come to oversee RWBY's trial? And I'll get more into it in the conclusion, but these smaller scenes are just so characterizing. Plus, we're introduced to Weiss's semblance.
Jeez, you two couldn't hit the broadside of a... You...
Those Ursa are like, why do we hear boss music? And without a word of exposition, we're given Yang's Hulk-esque semblance and shown kinda how it works.
Remember your training, Weiss. Head up, shoulders back, right foot forward. Not that forward.
And we see Weiss's mere canasta and her rigid, rehearsed fighting style against RWBY's no need for any pretext fighting style. Feather size expectation subversion setting up the giant Nevermore.
Understanding both dark and light helps us manifest our aura. Everyone has some of both. You project yourself and your soul when fighting.
No! This time, with the explanation of the durability of characters, we get to see Ren fighting a King Taijitu. The black and white heads are an obvious metaphor for what Pyrrha is saying, and we get to see the full extent of aura.
I still don't think that's what a sloth sounds like.
Lancaster is the best.
Stop worrying! I am so far beyond worrying! In a good way, in a bad way!
Remember this? I think I shall call him Chekhov!
On her tail.
I can't take it anymore!
A little more visual exposition about how Yang's semblance works.
Could everyone just chill out for 2 seconds before something crazy happens again?
Setting achievable goals.
I said jump!
She's gonna fall.
She'll be fine.
She's falling.
So if you quit trying to show off, I'll be nicer.
The first bit of character growth from Weiss, in the face of her teammate's death, or more likely injury given our recent seminar on aura, she decides to make a compromise to make sure RWBY doesn't needlessly put herself in danger again.
Pyrrha!
Done!
Nora, nailed it!
Heads up!
Jean, already finding himself in the leader-strategist role.
Well, we should put it to a vote. I think we just did.
I love democracy.
It's a bit strange Pyrrha bringing up the rear, but while Jean has a parabellum to complete,
We're gonna be late!
she can pick up some of the slack for him in the meantime.
I do, sir.
But when did she change out of her uniform? If this is a lesson being taught, you'd expect them to have their normal fighting clothes on standby, and B, in close proximity to a changing room.
I've made more mistakes than any man, woman, and child on this planet.
And the man's never once led me astray.
I like the somewhat of an oxymoron that Ozpin has declared he has made a lot of mistakes, but Port says that he has never led him astray. subtly fits into the theme that Oz was on his own for these when he made mistakes, and when he had people with him, he would succeed more often.
I've made more mistakes than any man.
And not just the men, but the women. And the children, too.
I always wanted bunk beds as a kid.
Remember this?
I see a girl before me who has spent her entire life getting exactly what she wanted.
Well, not entirely true.
And that's the end of Weiss's arc. After RWBY is given the leadership, it goes back on itself until she's called out by Professor Port. And it's a nice touch that RWBY has given her something that she was never given. But why does she vote no on bunk beds? I would imagine when she was younger and told no, she grew out of it into the rigid self that we see now. Then RWBY has taken her away from her carefully controlled system and allowing her to be who she wants to be.
In the middle of the night.
It was day.
Dozens of them!
2 of them. She's been having this recurring dream for nearly a month now.
How does Ren know that Nora's exaggerating if it was a dream? I'd bet she told Ren the dream after waking up, and she's been steadily exaggerating it over the last month. Regardless, I'm not complaining about watching everybody listen to the story.
That hurts!
Please stop.
We know from later seasons that Velvet is one of the most powerful characters, or at the very least isn't a first here. So Velvet gets a restraint win, even if she'd also get a win for putting Team Cardinal on their ass. Joel Heyman is always a win. You might be asking, since when? Since just now, my dear friend. Professor Ublik is one of my favourite characters in the show, and I didn't realise it at first, but it's the same person playing Caboose who was my favourite character in Red vs. Blue long before I'd seen RWBY.
While this must feel like ancient history to many of you, it is imperative to remember that these are relatively recent events. Why the...
Just watching them all look from one side of the room to another as he moves around. Look, Garden's already there.
If I can't do this on my own, then what good am I?
And the way I see it, as long as you're there for me when I need you, we'll be friends for a long time.
Jean's arc starting when he refuses help from his team, putting him under the thumb of Carden.
I don't care what you do to me, but you are not messing with my team. Huh?
And when he puts his team first, he gets his first solo win, with the aura that Pyria activated for him, no less.
Yeah, we gotta tell them what happened.
We could. Or perhaps we could just keep it our little secret.
Pyria knows that Jean needs this win from when he said,
I don't want to be the damsel in distress, I want to be the hero!
But we know that he was helped, and after he put his team first, so it fits well with the theme.
You no good stowaway.
Hey, a no good stowaway would have been caught. I'm a great stowaway.
Semantics.
Hey, get down from there this instant.
Is that Adam Sandler? Setting up in hindsight that Faunus recognize each other easily.
Are you okay?
I'm wonderful. Thank you for asking.
Do you want to get up?
Yes.
Oh, I'm really sorry. I definitely didn't think you heard me.
Oh, this whole interaction with Penny, lying on the ground and then Weiss pointing when she turns up in front of them. And politeness.
Wonderful. Thank you for asking. Is this what it was like when you met me?
No, she seems far more coordinated.
Well, I mean, she hasn't exploded yet, so I'd say that's accurate.
It's because they've been at war with my family for years. War as an actual bloodshed. And every day, my father would come home furious. And that made for a very difficult childhood.
Weiss's motivation regarding Faunus, which I get more into in the conclusion, and her later learning that it doesn't matter.
Humans and the Faunus. Of course, despite being promised equality, the Faunus were subjected to discrimination and hate.
It's done a couple of times, the simple 2D animation spicing up what would otherwise be a shot-reverse shot.
I was right. And I think Weiss's hair looks wonderful today.
Compliments.
She does like tuna a lot.
Fun fact, that was ad-libbed by Lindsay Jones. Why was Blake thrown back while Roman was unmoved? I'd say a couple things. First is that Roman was ready for the explosion, while Blake was momentarily distracted in that moment. And second is that the explosion was angled towards Blake, so she got the brunt of the explosion.
It's mine!
Plus, this sets up that Roman can overpower a huntress in training, but more than one will easily overpower him, which does make it believable when Blake overpowers him in the next season.
Back when I was with...
Stop. Do you have any idea of how long we've been searching for you? 12 hours.
It's a bit confusing that Weiss says 12 hours when Blake has been gone all weekend, but I'd imagine it's a case of they only just started looking for her on Monday morning, and then found her Monday evening. They thought she might come back Saturday or Sunday, but when she didn't by Monday, that was cause for serious concern. I think they wake up on the Monday, they go into town, and Ruby says that Blake's been gone all weekend, and then they talk about how to find her. So long as you can get past the at times clunky exposition and somewhat questionable animation, you have a rich world with some of the best animated fighting choreography on the internet. And there's nothing I can say about the choreography that hasn't been said before, and that would do it justice. So all I'll say is, well done and thank you, Monty, for this magnificent creation. Now correct me if I'm wrong about any of the following. I can't find the source that I got my information from, but this was Monty's darling, his love child. He was in his early 30s working for RoosterTeeth, and they gave him creative freedom to do as he pleased with his new show, putting total faith in him. The reason that the fight choreography was so good is that Monty was an animator's director. This was his creation, and as an animator he could determine what was the best way of doing any given thing, rather than a director telling the animator what they want and the animator having little authority to do anything else that might be better. He created a piece of art using possibly the most essential tool in art, color. Every name had to either be a color or invoke the thought of a color, make a specific color spring to mind. Ruby Rose is easy, Weiss Schnee is simply German for white and snow respectively, Blake is an old English word meaning black, and the belladonna is a toxic berry which is black. Yang Xiaolong is sort of Chinese for sunny little dragon. Then designed characters around the color, or possibly it was the other way around, taking inspiration from various fairy tale characters as well. And I understand that Monty created the world of Remnant using a napkin and wiping ketchup off his mouth, and then something equally abstract and food-related to determine the mountains and forests and stuff. There is so much character in each action shot, like when they hit the ground in the Emerald Forest. Ruby hits the ground competently, but with less grace than her older counterparts. Weiss is gracefully using a semblance, Ren quickly and efficiently barrels round a tree and easily lands on his feet to brush himself off. Yang is enjoying the experience and keeping it going for as long as possible, and finishing by bursting through the trees and hitting the ground running. Pyrrha destroying tree trunks to slow herself and immediately taking a ready position on the high ground, and then proceeding to help out Jean. And after killing the Deathstalker, Jean hits the ground with no grace at all, Nora lands on her butt without a care in the world, Pyrrha with a superhero landing, and Ren collapsing with exhaustion. I imagine living with Nora is very tiring for an introvert. But no opening logos. That's worth a win for sure. Also, the Birdman was right. The subtitles add a ton of time to the editing process. I've mentioned the theme before. People, friendship, teamwork. How people can help you out and you can't rely on yourself all the time. Sometimes you do need help. And how did I forget all the teamwork wins? It's a good theme when you're making and establishing teams, if a bit on the nose. Torchwick spends the season using goons. He loses when they find Ruby in the beginning, Glinda turns up, and when Ruby starts shooting at Cinder too, that's when they leave. Roman and Cinder tag team while the Huntresses work together and they win. The first main instance is Candy Cane though. The first time, together but acting independently, they set the forest on fire. The second, Ruby tries fighting by herself and she is almost killed by the Deathstalker, but then Weiss saves her, completing the first bit of her arc. Then later, against the Nevermore, they're working together and succeed. As the former counselor for Project Freelancer said, they had complete and total faith in one another. In classes, Weiss does succeed against your Bombaduke, but Ruby says it should have been way easier for her than it was. The discourse between them since Ruby's appointment to leader causes them to operate suboptimally, shall we say. It does get cleared up rather quickly by Port and Ozpin. However, Port believes wholeheartedly in Oz, so he's the right person to talk to about believing in people. In the Forest of Forever Fall, Jean chooses Juniper over his own humiliation, expulsion, and other reprimandation, which leads to him getting one over on Cardin when his aura activates. The Ursa shows up, Cardin's team abandons him, and he needs Jean to save him, who is also helped by Pyrrha. Later on, when Blake abandons her team, she wasn't able to beat Torchwick by herself. She and Sun had to work together. When Ruby and Penny turned up, the tables turned. I mean, Penny did do it all single-handedly, but motivated by her new friends. Again, Torchwick is using nameless goons, and overall he loses. He gets away, but he's completely unsuccessful. It's small, but the SDC clearly doesn't care for people, except the money that they can give them, I would imagine. And the SDC surely finds itself suffering at the end of the season. The Faunus allegory for discrimination is as simple as the X-Men. Anybody experiencing discrimination can project their experience onto them. And while you'll never catch me defending or allowing any kind of discrimination to fly, not unlike the Seek way of things, Ruby does well to show us where Weiss's prejudice came from. Again, I'm not saying that justifies it, just that it has come from how she was brought up and how she was educated and had embedded in her from childhood. Education is possibly the most powerful weapon against hate. That and love. And I think Church from Red vs. Blue said it best.
It's not about hating the guy on the other side because someone told you to. I mean, you should hate someone because they're an asshole, or a pervert, or a snob, or they're lazy, or arrogant, or an idiot, or a know-it-all. Those are reasons to dislike somebody. You don't hate a person because someone told you to. You have to learn to despise people on a personal level. Not because they're red, or because they're blue, but because you know them, and you see them every single day, and you can't stand them because they're a complete and total fucking douchebag.